The file came to me as a routine compassionate discharge review. 18 months post-bereavement, single bonded partner lost to a construction collapse on the Tesseran secondary platform. No dependents, no remaining family in sector. The flag on the file read, possible diminished capacity candidate. Yield projections indicate continued decline. Compassionate review recommended. Yield projection officer Etta Marin had signed it herself. She expected me to sign below her name, schedule a termination interview, and close the matter before the next cycle. I opened the output logs first. That is standard procedure. You establish the baseline before you read anything else, so the data speaks before the narrative does. The output logs were wrong. I mean that precisely. They were not wrong in the sense that the instruments had malfunctioned. They were wrong in the sense that they did not match the flag, the projection, or anything in the compact's established grief response taxonomy for bonded species. Engineer Solon Mara had logged a 6.2% increase in task completion rate in the first month following confirmed partner loss, a 9.1% increase by month 3. Month 6 showed a structural analysis throughput figure I had to check against the station's all-species record just to confirm the instrument hadn't miscalibrated. It had not miscalibrated. The figure was real. By month 12, Solon Mara was outperforming her own pre-bereavement 5-year average by 17%, across every tracked metric: completion rate, error rate, physical endurance cycles, voluntary overtime hours, response time on emergency callouts, every number moving in the same direction, upward, steadily, month over month, without plateau. I set the output logs aside and pulled the biomarker record. This is where I should tell you what grief looks like in a bonded species. The Compact's Xenobiological Behavioral Standards Index lists 41 registered bonded species. For all 41, the grief response follows the same architecture. The bonding neurochemicals, whatever form they take in a given species' biology, begin degrading within days of confirmed partner loss. By 3 months, the bond state hormones have cleared the system below functional threshold. The organism returns, gradually, to its pre-bonded baseline. Output recovers. The loss is real, but the biology moves on. The registry calls this bonded loss normalization. It takes between 2 and 8 months depending on the species. It is, the index notes, a necessary adaptive feature. A species that did not recover from loss could not function as a civilization. Solon Mara's biomarker record did not show bonded loss normalization. The oxytocin analog compounds, the human pair bonding hormones, the ones that build and sustain the bond state, had not cleared. At 18 months post-loss, they were still present, not at trace levels, at 73% of peak bonded state concentration, running simultaneously alongside cortisol levels that should, by every projection model we have, indicate acute chronic stress. Norepinephrine elevated above her pre-bereavement baseline by a consistent margin across all 18 months. Dopamine cycling in a pattern the Compact's standard behavioral analytics software could not categorize. It kept flagging the pattern as data corruption and asking me to resubmit the sample. I resubmitted 4 times. The pattern was not corruption, it was the data. I flagged the dopamine anomaly for the directorate's instruments technician. He ran a diagnostic on the analysis unit overnight and returned the next morning with a clean certification and no explanation for the pattern. I noted this in the file and moved on. What I was looking at was a neurochemical state that should not be stable. Bond hormones and stress hormones and reward pathway hormones, all elevated simultaneously, all sustained, all running together as a single integrated system rather than competing for priority. In any of the 41 registered bonded species, that combination would indicate a cascade failure, the organism's neurochemistry destabilizing before collapse. In Solon Mara, it appeared to be the operating condition. 18 months in, sustained, productive. I pulled the sleep records. Normal range, slightly above her pre-bereavement average. Caloric intake, normal. Incident reports, 0 in 18 months, down from 2 minor incidents in the 3 years prior. Physical assessment scores, improving. I sat with the file for a long time. Then I did something outside the scope of a compassionate discharge review. I closed the individual file. I opened the Compact Species Registry's Xenobiological Behavioral Archive and submitted a broad query. All logged human bereavement cases involving confirmed long-term bonded partner loss, with output metrics attached, spanning the last 40 years of registry data. The archive flagged the query as unusually wide. I confirmed it twice. It took the system 11 minutes to compile. That is longer than any species-specific behavioral query I have submitted in 14 years of this work. The archive was not slow. There was simply a great deal of data. The query returned 412 cases. I sorted them by output trajectory in the 12 months following confirmed loss. Of the 412 cases, 61 showed the expected decline followed by normalization, a curve the registry would recognize. Those were the ones in the taxonomy. The ones someone had looked at, confirmed matched the model, and filed. The remaining 351 showed output curves that went up. Not all of them climbed as steeply as Sol and Mara. Some plateaued. Some showed a brief initial dip before the rise. But the directional trend across 351 cases out of 412 was the same. Loss followed by increased output, sustained over time, not declining toward any visible floor within the data window. I cross-referenced against species. I ran the same query for the 10 most common bonded species in the Compact's labor registry, filtered for the same loss criteria and the same output metric attachment requirement. The results were what the taxonomy predicted: decline, recovery, normalization, a bell curve with the center at 8 months. I went back to the human cases. I pulled the biomarker data on every case where it had been collected. The neurochemical picture was consistent: bond hormones not clearing, stress hormones elevated, reward pathways cycling in the anomalous pattern. Not in all cases, and not always at the same concentrations, but the signature was there often enough that I stopped calling it anomalous and started writing it down as a feature. Here is what the Compact's Xenobiological Behavioral Standards Index does not tell you. In every other registered bonded species, the neurochemical architecture of the bond state is a resource. It runs on the presence of the bonded partner. Remove the partner, and the resource depletes, and the organism returns to baseline. This is adaptive. The index explains this clearly. A species that ties its operational capacity permanently to a single individual is not viable as a civilization. Evolution does not favor it. Humans appear to have evolved something different. The human pair bond does not run on the partner's presence. It runs on the partner. Something in the long-term bonded state neurochemistry writes the partner into the organism's functional architecture at a level that does not degrade on loss, not over months, not over years, possibly not ever within a biologically meaningful window. The bond hormones do not clear because the bond state does not end. It converts. The presence-dependent reward signal drops, and in its place, something else rises. A state the Compact has no category for, because no registered species produces it. Elevated output. Elevated precision. A narrowing of focus that the stress hormone elevation should, by every model, prevent, but does not. The organism becomes, in measurable terms, more capable, not despite the grief, through it. I am not a poet. I am a behavioral examiner. I will write what the data says and not more. The data says that humans built their civilization on a neurochemical state that the rest of the Compact produces only in emergency conditions, if at all. The data says that the thing we classify as a bereavement risk is, in a majority of documented cases, the opposite. The data says that a grieving human is not a diminished capacity candidate. A grieving human is a human operating in a mode the rest of the galaxy cannot access. I wrote my conclusion on the compassionate discharge review for Sol and Mara. It read, "No diminished capacity identified. Compassionate discharge not recommended. Subject operating within normal human parameters. File closed." Then I wrote a second document, addressed to the Directorate's Xenobiological Threat Classification Office, which had not requested anything from me. I titled it, Addendum to Species Registry Entry, Bonded Loss Response in Homo sapiens, Reclassification Recommended. Yield Projection Officer Etta Marin stopped by my annex the following morning to ask why the file had been returned without a discharge recommendation. I told her to read the biomarker data before she asked me to resubmit it. She read it. She did not ask me to resubmit it. She did ask me one question, standing in the doorway, holding the output log sheet. "How long does it last?" she said. "The elevated phase. When does it normalize?" I showed her the data window I had pulled. 40 years of registry cases. No visible floor. She stood there for a moment. Then she set the sheet down on my desk and left without saying anything else. I thought that was the correct response. I did not have anything to add that the numbers hadn't already said. Sol and Mara is still on S&vor. Her output figures for this month came in 2 days ago. They are still going up.